Hello, my name's Francis Pott and I'm a composer. I was a chorister between 1966 and 71, I think, and I'm therefore looking at this across the chasm of just over half a century. Edwin Muir, the poet, once said that our memories are real in a different sense from the things we try to resuscitate. And so if I get some things wrong, or in fact, somebody with clearer recall could point to them and say, no, you're getting that wrong, or elaborating it, then that would be fair enough. I don't think it diminishes the point I'm going to make. I thought long and hard in reply to the question, about a piece that meant most to me and was a defining moment. And in a sense, I'm cheating because this isn't so much a defining moment as a sort of slow burn of something that came to be significant. But I'm going back past some of the really defining musical experiences, things like singing William Byrd's music. That was always a red letter day. And I thought actually of a piece which is not that well known. And I thought of it because it's the first thing I can actually remember singing. It won't have been literally the first, but there was an occasion, a big occasion, when we did this. And that piece is Strengthen Ye the Weak Hands by Sir William Harris. It starts with those words about the Lord creating medicines out of the earth, perhaps rather appropriate at the moment, and he that is wise will not abhor them. But it then goes on into wonderful words from Isaiah chapter 35, strengthen ye the weak hands and confirm the feeble knees. Say to them that are of a fearful heart, fear not, your God will come and save you. I may have got that marginally wrong. Harris, in fact, left out some key words. Isaiah was perhaps a less benign figure than Harris, and said, your God will come with a vengeance. And it's perhaps an accurate light shone onto Harris's character that he thought he'd leave those words out. Anyway, we sang this piece, I think, at an occasion which must have been between the choirs of Eton, where we actually were, and New College, and I think King's Cambridge, and somebody less senile than I would be able to say who the fourth choir was. There were four of them. One of the things I remember is a cricket match in which my elder contemporary, Anthony Kent, I reminded him of this later, he bowled somebody out by rolling the ball along the ground from about 100 feet away, a sort of fantastically improbable feat, whereupon he looked vastly apologetic. Such a nice man. I reminded him of this decades later, and he denied all knowledge of it, of course. Anyway, there was a big evensong and we sang Strengthen Ye the Weak Hands. I don't know whether the words meant something major to me at the time, but in retrospect, and I suppose the child is the father to the man, it comes to mean something deeper on a variety of levels. I think there's something particular about the key of E major. And if I cite other things that are written in that key, such as I Know That My Redeemer Liveth, or one of the E major fugues from the 48, and I can never remember whether it's book one or book two, the slow one anyway, somebody will say, oh yes, but Baroque pitch, and it was all a semitone lower. Well, that doesn't really matter because for me, it was what I heard at the time. And E major, I think, which is the key of Strengthen Ye the Weak Hands, or the main part of it, it's always seemed to me to breathe a kind of benign providence. And those words, be strong, fear not, as a tiny tadpole in the vast pond of New College, I think they probably did mean something then. But if I fast forward a few years, on the 15th of June 1969, there was a centenary concert in memory of Sir Hugh Allen. It was the centenary of his birth in 1869. And Sir Hugh Allen had been the organist of New College and simultaneously the principal of the Royal College of Music, an incredible feat which couldn't be equalled now, I don't think. And he had a vast effect on the music of Oxford University, a galvanizing, rejuvenating effect. And Harris will have known him, I think, in both of those places. Now, we as choristers went and sang, in fact the whole choir of course, went and sang in this concert at the Royal College of Music. And there were various tributary speeches. That's probably the wrong word. I don't mean tributary like rivers, but anyway, speeches in tribute. And one of them was by Herbert Howells, and it was followed almost immediately, if I've got this right, by Sir William Harris. Howells proceeded onto the stage like an undertaker and proceeded to speak like one for what seemed an interminable length of time. This is probably deeply unfair of me, and there is much of his work that I greatly admire. And yet, my impression is that by the end of his speech, I'd learnt more about Herbert Howells than I had about Sir Hugh Allen. But then, after him, onto the stage scampered really this twinkling little man who began to speak with utter disarming charm and self-deprecation and humour for, I thought, not long enough. And he was Sir William Harris. From him, I learnt a great deal more about Sir Hugh Allen than I did about Harris, except in the sense that here was a man in front of me, clearly deeply comfortable in his own skin and with a very well-adjusted and self-deprecating view of himself, from which proceeded a kindliness and a kind of humanity which I've never forgotten. And I do remember that at the end of his speech, he said something like, and if Sir Hugh were here today, he would say, "Pipe down, Harris, for heaven's sake, you've said far too much already, and that's advice I shall very gratefully accept." Whereupon he scampered away again, and I never saw him again. Some years later, I think 1973, I'd come to be friends with the conductor Peter Phillips and his family. And for some reason, I was staying with them in Petersfield, which is where Sir William lived the last few years of his life. And by chance, somebody was trying to engineer for us, the two of us, Peter and me, to go and meet Sir William. But sadly, he was in his last illness. And we were present at friends of theirs at a garden party in the very next garden. And so I have a memory of looking up at a window upstairs in the next house where I knew Sir William to be lying. And it was evident from what people were saying that his time was short. And indeed, sadly, he died shortly afterwards. So it was a great feeling of what might have been. But I encountered him first through Strengthen Ye the Weak Hands, and secondly, through his speech at the RCM. Thirdly, by not quite meeting him in person. And I suppose then fourthly, by that memory, as Muir said, different from memory being different from the reality of what we're trying to resuscitate. And yet it has stayed with me. It's something of an icon as to how people should behave in public life and how they should treat other people. And so I suppose in my own humble and unequal way, I've tried to go by those things as watchwords. And so what being a chorister meant to me has meant an enormous amount more than the music or the text itself or the experience of singing it. It's all the things that go into it, into the music in the first place, into the writing of it, and all the things that we gain from it. Harris was a deeply, as I've said already, I'm repeating myself, but a deeply self-deprecating man. One of the pieces he wrote, which means a huge amount to many people, is "Bring us, O Lord God, at our own awakening." I've no idea if it's true, but I heard a story that he wrote that to order as something, as sight reading material for some sort of competition or exam, and was entirely dismissive of it. It said it was nothing much really. You can easily behold a person like that in their public conduct and think that somebody's so relaxed and so outgoing that it came easily to them, and that perhaps we should take them at their own valuation. I think very much not. I think to him was given to reproduce something of lasting importance. And it may not be Beethoven, it may not be Bach, but it's something which has the utter stamp of sincerity and the mark of the man. And so that is a piece that's meant a huge amount to me, as indeed has my entire memory of New College. And I wouldn't want to stop, actually, without paying a huge tribute of thanks to Murray Somerville and also John Schaefer, who were both organists and assistants in my time as a chorister, because without them, I wonder if I would have gone on composing. I think the selfless generosity with time and the kindly interest they both took in me as something more than just a chorister who couldn't sing very well was something that had a lasting effect. And so I'm privileged that I'm still in touch with Murray. Very seldom I hear from John Schaefer, but I heard a lovely story which I must share. That my friend Jeremy Filsell, the organist, was playing a little of my organ symphony in America and practicing it, and he encountered John Schaefer, who I think was canon theologian or something of that sort at Grace Cathedral in Kansas. And Jeremy realized that John had known me at some point, and so he said, "You must hear a bit of this." So he played a bit of real Sturm und Drang, fire and brimstone stuff from the end of the first movement. And allegedly, John stood there scratching his head. And then when Jeremy had finished, John delivered the immortal line, which went something like, "But I remember him as such a harmless little boy." So thank you, John. Thank you, Murray. I'm sitting here in my music room at home, and this room is referred to darkly by the rest of the family as the pothole. Well, I might never have been in the pothole and never writing all this music if it hadn't been for you two, and to a great extent for Sir William Harris as well. So thank you, all three.